I am reading from Psalm 34, verses 1 through 10. I will extol the Lord at all times. His praise will always be on my lips. My soul will boast in the Lord. Let the afflicted hear and rejoice. Glorify the Lord with me. Let us exalt his name together. I sought the Lord, and he answered me. He delivered me from all my fears. Those who look to him are radiant. Their faces are never covered with shame. This poor man called, and the Lord heard him. He saved him out of all his troubles. The angel of the Lord encamps around those who fear him, and he delivers them. Taste and see that the Lord is good. Blessed is the man who takes refuge in him. Fear the Lord, you his saints, for those who fear him lack nothing. The lions may grow weak and hungry, but those who seek the Lord lack no good thing.
The gospel reading is from the book of Luke, chapter 24, verses 13 through 31. Luke 24, 13 through 31. Now on the same day that Jesus was risen from the grave and appeared to his disciples, two of Jesus' followers were going to a village called Emmaus, about 7 miles from Jerusalem, and talking with each other about all these things that had happened. While they were talking and discussing, Jesus himself came near and went along with them, but their eyes were kept from recognizing him. He said to them, "What are you discussing?" They stood still, looking sad. Then one of them, whose name was Cleopas, answered him, "Are you the only stranger in Jerusalem who does not know the things that have taken place these days?" He asked them, "What things?" And they replied, "The things about Jesus of Nazareth, the one who was a prophet, mighty in deed and word before God and all the people, and how our chief priests and leaders handed him over to be condemned to death and crucified him. But we had hoped that he was the one to redeem Israel. And yes, besides all this, it is now the 3rd day since these things took place. Moreover, some women of our group astounded us. They were at the tomb early this morning, and they did not find his body there. They came back and they told us that they had indeed seen a vision of angels and said that he was alive. Some of those who were with us went to the tomb and found it just as the women had said, but they did not see him." Then Jesus said to them, "Oh, how foolish are you! How slow of heart to believe all that the prophets have declared. Was it not necessary that the Messiah should suffer these things and then enter into his glory?" Then beginning with Moses and all the prophets, he interpreted to them the things about himself in all the scriptures. As they came near the village to which they were going, he walked ahead as if he were going on. But they urged him strongly, saying, Stay with us, because it's almost evening and the day is now nearly over." So he went in and stayed with them. When he was at the table with them, he picked up the bread, he blessed it, and he broke it, and he gave it to them. Then their eyes were opened. They recognized him, and just like that, he vanished from their sight. They said to each other, "Man, were not our hearts burning within us while he was talking to us on the road, while he was opening the scriptures to us?" The word of God for the people of God. Thanks be to God.
There is a question that comes up with some regularity for Dennis and I. It is, what are you hungry for? Right? It's a question that arises when we're trying to figure out what restaurant to choose for a meal out. Are we hungry for Mexican or Chinese or Italian? Are we craving comfort food or something exotic or unusual? Is there something that we haven't eaten for a while and are longing to have once again? What are you hungry for? Is a question that Dennis sometimes asks as I'm heading out the door in the morning to the office, wondering what to have for supper. Hoping that I'll say Applebee's, rather than giving a suggestion for something for him to prepare. What are you hungry for? Is a question moms and dads ask their children, wanting to prepare something they will like, that will make mealtime go smoothly. What are you hungry for? When we think of hunger, we normally think of food. We satisfy our physical hunger by eating. We may grab a quick bite, quick snack or supper and eat on the run as we head out the door to whatever our evening activities are. But traditionally we gather. We gather around tables to eat and share food. We do this in nuclear families. We do this as extended families. We do this with friends with whom we live, like in college, or like places like Pine Village. Folks gather for meals together around the table. And we gather as a church family as well for potluck meals. And starting this week, our church community will begin gathering for meals together on Wednesday evenings before other activities. We share food around the table, but we also share conversation about the daily activities of our lives. It is around this table that we can share our delights and our disappointments. It is around the table that we share stories of what our lives are about. It is around the table that we have an opportunity to connect more deeply to each other. A couple years ago, Dennis and I hosted a Christmas dinner for my siblings and their families. Now we had to kind of push our living room furniture to the sides and set up several tables and gather an eclectic group of chairs to accommodate everyone. After dessert had been served and eaten, I suggested that we take out the tables and find a more comfortable place to sit. But no one wanted to move. Gathering around the table became a special, sacred space. Sitting around the table was more than just eating. We were enjoying conversation and connecting with each other and being nourished within each other's presence. We wanted to sit and savor that time as long as we could. Meals are part of the gospel stories, especially in the Gospel of Luke. We find many stories of Jesus hanging out at tables and eating. Jesus performed his first miracle while attending a wedding, eating and celebrating. Jesus ate with a variety of people. Levi, or Matthew, held a great banquet for Jesus and invited all his tax collector friends and others deemed as sinners to join in. Jesus himself invited himself to a meal with Zacchaeus at his house, and again ate a meal with someone regarded as an outsider. Jesus, in fact, was accused by his critics, the Pharisees and the teachers of the law, of being a glutton and drunkard because of all his eating. But Jesus was also invited to the homes of some Pharisees, and at one time noticed that some guests were being treated with honor and others were not. So he told parables about meals, about banquets, about feasts, and who was to be included. One time when sharing a meal with religious leaders, a woman of ill repute came and anointed his feet with perfume, which provided yet another opportunity for Jesus to teach about God's kingdom values. Jesus ate meals with his friends, with Mary and Martha and Lazarus, and he ate meals with his disciples. The last one we remember well. Eating exposed Jesus and showed who he was, what he valued, and what he desired. Jesus understood the table as a place of revelation, which we see clearly in our story today, when he sat down with his companions from the road. When Jesus took bread, blessed it, broke it, and gave it to them, what happened then? Their eyes were opened, and they recognized him. At table, at a meal, Jesus revealed himself. Now, eating seems like a simple act, but really it is more complex, where eating exposes us and says something about who we are and what we desire. In looking back to the story of Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden, we see that there was a hunger, a desire, a curiosity for something more. Eve saw the tree was good for food and that it was a delight to the eyes, and that the tree was to be desired to make one wise. Eve ate, and Adam ate, and what that eating came knowing. The Genesis text says, "Then the eyes of both were opened." They were exposed. And when they heard the voice of God, they hid themselves. So there is a shadow side to hunger, where we find both the pleasures of eating and the challenges of it. And we are aware of patterns of eating or not eating that manifest complications like anorexia or bulimia or obesity and other conditions related to diet and habits of consumption. What are you hungry for is a deeper question than what food we need to eat in order to live. It is a question about what we truly desire, yearn for, or long for. Hunger is longing for something that will be genuinely sustaining and nourishing instead of hungering for decoys. Decoys are those things that appear to fulfill our longings, but in reality only distract from what is truly satisfying. Our televisions, magazines, social media try to tell us what we are hungry for the newest iPhone or tablet, for the most convenient appliances, for the newest styles, for the most fuel-efficient cars. We are told to hunger for the best retirement plans or the latest security system or the all-inclusive vacation package. There are many things that are a delight to our eyes, but are not really good for us. I admit that when I hunger for something, I hunger more for a dish of rich ice cream or a decadent piece of cheesecake rather than hunger for a carrot stick or a piece of broccoli. What do you hunger for? Hunger is a longing for something that will fill our deepest needs. Hunger is a craving for something more, to stretch beyond ourselves and what we know to something more satisfying. This means abandoning the familiar pattern and habits of what we know to grasp something better. Yet it may be unfamiliar and maybe even scary. Our deepest hunger is to connect with God, the one who created us, sustains us, and nourishes us. The psalmist tells us, we heard it, taste, right? Taste and see that the Lord is good. And the result will be that those who seek the Lord will lack no good thing. We will be filled with what is most important. We will experience the love of God that is bigger and more encompassing than anything else as we continue to taste all that God has for us. And this is echoed by the Apostle Peter as he writes to a group of exiles, encouraging them to do what? To crave spiritual milk, so that by it you may grow up in your salvation, now that you have tasted that the Lord is good. We see again this image of hunger, of craving spiritual connection and nourishment. And as Larry has already said to the children in the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus reminds us that blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. It's a spiritual quest to hunger for those things that will truly nourish us, filling ourselves with the love of God and for each other and for the world around us. It means following Jesus and living into his desire for a kingdom where all will be fed and find abundance. I read a story recently in a book entitled Appetites about a woman named Margaret, a 51-year-old Episcopal minister. Margaret lost a good decade of her life to the obsession with food, dieting, binging, loathing herself through it all. A time in her life when she would steal into grocery stores like a thief and fill her cart with lemon cookies and donuts and loaves of bread. And then she would shut herself in her car and begin to eat vast quantities. She'd eat until she ached. Eventually, in her struggle and despair, she was led to Overeaters Anonymous and slowly made peace with her appetite and learned to eat well, indicated by her kitchen counters, which are now strewn with fresh corn and late summer tomatoes and strawberries and orange juice and peanut. She subsequently wrote a memoir about her recovery, which she called Holy Hunger. Margaret turned her appetite and sought connection to God through her prayer life. In prayer, she was able to experience vividly the feelings of love and a palpable sense of connection with the divine God. Through this ongoing practice, she was able to overcome and accept the inevitable frustrations and disappointments of daily life and live with calmness and a deep sense of being filled and satisfied. I wonder about those two disciples on the road to Emmaus. What were they hungering for? Remember the story as we heard it. When Jesus came and walked alongside them, he asked them what they were discussing. And they explained that they were talking about the prophet Jesus of Nazareth and how he was powerful in word and deed before God and all the people. He had been crucified. Their hopes had been dashed. Their hopes that he would be their Messiah. That points to what they were hungering for, what they were longing for, that someone to redeem them, to save them, and to offer them a new, abundant life. Someone to change the way things were under Roman rule and find a new way. And so as they listened and as they got to the end of the day, they invited this stranger to stay with them and sit together with them at the table and eat. And it was at that meal again that their eyes were open and they recognized Jesus. It is to a meal at the Lord's table that we are all invited to bring our hungers and be filled. The communion table invites us to meet Christ in one another at the point of our hunger. Gathering at the communion table is an invitation to listen to the hollow and empty places within us and seek sustenance and nourishment for our deepest desires. The communion table offers a place to hold all our hungers and all of our longings. It is here at the table that we acknowledge that we have deeper hungers and keener desires than what we see in the world around us. We bring all of our hungers with us, whatever they are. A hunger for a deeper connection to God. A hunger for a more fulfilling job. A hunger for better relationships with our neighbors. Whatever we hunger, we bring to the table. To gather at the communion table is a countercultural act that challenges us to sort through all of our competing hungers within us and name our deepest desires. Name our holy hunger. We bring to the communion table the difficulties and struggles and sins of our human lives to once again connect to the story of Jesus' life, death, and resurrection. We look forward to this renewal into the reconciling work of Christ. As we partake of the bread and cup, our eyes are opened. our eyes are opened and we meet Jesus once again. And our story becomes part of the divine story. We come to the table remembering that we are not alone. We come admitting that we can't get by on our own reserves. We come to be fully united with Christ and bound together with each other. Our community life becomes woven into the presence of God that we share. In our opening hymn, we sang our desires to bring our hungers and be fed at this communion table. We sang our prayer in these words, nourish us well and teach us to fashion lives that are holy and hearts that are true. In this gathering, around the table, we are transformed to once again carry the divine with us as we go back into the world. What we receive sustains us as we offer others the feeding that we have found here and invite them to join us. Rachel Held Evans, writer, speaker, and devoted follower of Jesus, loved the scriptures. She had the gift of making the gospel message accessible to many. She wrote, "The gospel doesn't need a coalition devoted to keeping the wrong people out. It needs a family of sinners saved by grace, committed to tearing down the walls, throwing open the doors, and shouting, 'Welcome! Here's bread and wine. Come eat with us and talk.' This isn't a kingdom for the worthy. It's a kingdom for the hungry. So come to the hunger table. Come and eat and be filled.